Hi, I'm Melissa Hobson. I'm a freelance marine science and conservation writer based in Hastings, and my business is the Ocean Writer Limited. So he was like, actually, I'm going to publish your example story. Went on the front cover, and I was like, what? Doing good work and being good to work with. And I think that kind of speaks for itself a lot of the time. If you don't put yourself forward for them, you're not even giving someone the opportunity to say no to you.
Yes, this time we find out what it's like being freelance for Melissa Hobson. Now, I got to know Mel a lot better a few years ago when she was in the Being Freelance Community and she joined our mastermind group called the Cookie Collective. And in our very first call, when we were explaining where we're at with our businesses, where we hope to be, I distinctly remember this line. It was brilliant. She said, I just want to write about fish. Now, at the time, she wasn't. She was working in PR and comms, but now she is known as the Ocean Writer. So you can see where this is going. It's been so amazing to see her go after this and make it happen. But I'm also really intrigued as to how that happened. So I can't wait for this conversation. If you fancy joining us in the Being Freelance community, head to the website beingfreelance.com, click the button, I'll see you in there. But for now, shall we crack on, shall we? We'll head to the south coast of the UK to chat to freelance ocean writer Melissa Hobson. Hey, Melissa!
Hi, good to see you.
So, as ever, how about we get started hearing how you got started being freelance?
Yeah, so I think it's a bit of a funny one with me because I've ended up being so hyper niche, writing specifically stories about the ocean, and quite a large proportion of my time things pooing and peeing in the ocean, that people kind of think, oh, you must have been laser focused, you got your marine biology degree and that's what you wanted to do, and then you got there. And that's really not what happened at all. Looking back, I think there were lots of forks in the road that took me here, but I just kind of bumbled along as I went. And really, I guess the first kind of important step that I took to get here, without realising it, was before I was even working. I was still at university and went on holiday to Australia and went to the Great Barrier Reef. And my travel agent said, well, if you go to the Great Barrier Reef, you need to get your dive certification. And I wasn't really a water baby, so I thought like, oh, well, I don't really want to, but I'm also a massive people pleaser, so I was like, yeah, okay, sure. So I booked it, and it was like a week, right? We did 2 days in the classroom in the pool. So the day in the classroom, you have a day of them saying, don't do this because you're going to die, and don't do this because you're going to die, and if you do this, you'll die. And I was like, I don't think I want to do this at all.
As somebody who has also learnt to scuba dive, so true. Except that you still do it. I'm just terrified of the dying bit. I focused on that.
Yeah, I mean, that bit, didn't like that bit. And then we went into the pool and they're making you take your mask off and take your reg out. And you've just been sitting in a classroom told about how you're going to die. So I'm like, why am I doing this? Trying to take all the kit together and worried that if I put it back wrong, it's going to be awful. And I remember just being like, I just need to get this week out of the way and then I never have to go scuba diving again. And then I went on the boat and we did our open water dives. So we went on a liverboard. You stay on the boat for, I think it was like a couple of nights, 3 days. And they went, all the way out to the Great Barrier Reef. And we did our open water dives there, kind of qualifying, and our first dives certified. And it was insane. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like, I think it was either my very first dive or one of them where it was just me and my buddy and we went off. And we had such a great time that we were bimbling around, and it was quite shallow, so we could stay up for quite a long time. And by the time we came back, everyone was like, oh my God, where have they gone? What had happened? And we were like, oh no, we saw some clownfish, we saw some turtles. It was awesome. And then, I came back to Bristol where I was at university at the time, and I thought like, oh, it's a shame I'm never going to do that again. But that I had been truly bitten by the bug. So that kind of planted the seed, I guess. And then I did a little bit more diving when I was traveling after university. And then I went to London, got a job in a PR agency, and kind of thought that was my path. And I did 10 or so years in London in PR, kind of agency side and in-house, for all various different types of clients, from food and drink and travel and charity stuff. And then I went to a small agency where they did quite a lot of charity, or we did some kind of cause-based stuff, and we did a lot of travel stuff as well. And I was still loving to travel and still diving at that point. And I'd kind of gone from the point of, if I was on holiday near the sea and there was a dive shop, I might try and, get in the water, to, okay, where can I go to go diving as a dive holiday? And then I started going freelance on the side as a writer, basically because my brother got married. He got married in Grand Cayman. That's where his wife is from. And I was like, great, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do so much diving. And then I looked at the price of diving in the Caribbean and went, oh, maybe I'm not. And at the time I was sending because I was doing travel PR, sending lots of journalists away to do review trips and stuff. And I thought, well, I write a lot. Like, most of my job in PR was writing. And often I'd maybe send a ghost written article that would get published, or I'd send a press release and it would get edited slightly and published, but, not having my name on anything. So I thought, I wonder if I could do this writing thing like as a bit of a side hustle. So I went and got the last, 3 or 4 kind of back copies of Scuba Diving magazine, which was one of the print mags in the UK at the time. And I read them cover to cover. And I emailed the editor and I was like, I am a writer, kind of, but I've never had anything published. I don't have my name on anything, but I'd really love to write for you. So what I'd done, I'd written him like an example story, kind of, following the format of their kind of features. And probably luckily for me, I'd done it about my last dive holiday where I was out in South Africa, and I'm going to caveat this with everything was fine and she was totally fine. But I went on a dive where one of the girls on our boat got the bends, so decompression sickness. It was all very dramatic. It happened. We were still on the dive. The dive was aborted. We had to, race back up to the surface, get back to shore. There were ambulance, there was oxygen. Like, it was all kind of crazy. And obviously from Steve's point of view as an editor, he was like, we've never really had anyone that's written about that and, been there when that happened. So he was like, actually, I'm going to publish my example story. Went on the front cover. And I was like, what? And he commissioned me for a little piece about the Cayman Islands. So I went out, and the tourist board kind of set up for me to do a little bit of diving there. And then, and then I was doing that on the side, kind of basically on my holidays while I was working agency side. My boss knew all about it, and, he was happy with me moonlighting because it meant I could, chat with editors and all that kind of stuff. And that was 10, 11 years ago that I kind of started doing it on the side with, I think I said Scuba Diving magazine, didn't I? It wasn't, it was Diver magazine. Yeah. And then I, after about a decade in London, had a massive case of burnout. And I was like, do you know what? I'm done. Throw in the towel. I don't want to do comms anymore. PR is really stressful. I want to go and do something completely different. And obviously, because I'm a diver, I was like, maybe I could do something ocean related. So I was kind of looking and I was Googling, and I could only find 2 extremes, right? Either I'll go back to probably school, I guess, to get a biology A-level, because I'm not a scientist. I quit science as soon as possible. So it's ridiculous that I'm now a science writer. So it was like, go back to school, get your biology A-level, go to university, probably do a master's, in marine biology. That's however many years. And then go and basically get your elbows out and fight tooth and nail to get these really rare in the field marine biologist jobs, where a lot of them actually are in the lab anyway, which I would have hated. Or you pay £2,000 a week to go and volunteer planting coral or doing something where like you're not really adding any value. So I was like, oh, this is a bit of, a bit rubbish. What am I going to do? Because I was like, I don't want to be a scientist, and I don't have £2,000 a week. I would just go on holiday and go back to work. That's, not what I want to do. And a couple of years before, I'd been interviewing a guy who's a shark scientist. His name's Simon Pearce. He's really cool. His Instagram is great. He's a professional photographer, so he's got these amazing photos and lots of horrendous puns and awful dad jokes. Sorry, Simon, but it's true. And I'd kind of connected with him and followed him on Instagram, so he was front of mind. And I messaged him, sent him an email, and I didn't think he'd reply because he's like the whale shark guy. He's like the guy, and he's kind of, quite well known in the field. And I was like, am I just barking up the wrong tree? Is there nothing in the middle? And he replied to me, and he was super nice and gave me a bit of advice. And then he said, were you emailing me because I've got my own charity? And I was like, oh, do you? That's awkward. Didn't realise. And they'd actually been looking for a comms person for however long beforehand and kind of been struggling to find the right person. So he was like, do you want to send your CV? And before I knew it, I was moving to Mozambique, and I was going to go and look after their comms on a voluntary basis. That was 2018. And while I was out there, kind of started doing a bit more of the writing. Obviously, I was in the field. They trained me as a research assistant to cover the proper research assistants when they had their weekends off. And it was just amazing. And I started doing a bit more of the writing as well. Was there for 2018, went to the Philippines with a different organisation in 2019, was doing comms there. And then obviously we hit the pandemic and the world imploded, and I catapulted back to my mum's spare bedroom in the UK, and everything kind of fell apart a little bit. And ended up finding myself freelance, I guess. I didn't even think about applying for a proper job. I was like, okay, cool. Been doing it on the side for a long time. Let's make this freelance thing work. So that was 6 years ago, something like that. Time absolutely flies.
It's crazy, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely crazy. And then, so I was kind of just trying to get by at that point. I was still probably thinking that I'd do more sustainability PR and comms, because there was a big demand for that at the time. So I was doing quite a lot of that. And then I kind of realised I still didn't like PR. It's really stressful. Like, it's fine. But I remember one day I was in the gym and there was some kind of urgent story breaking for a client. I can't remember what it was. So it was obviously really important. But at the time I was waiting for a journalist to get back to me or something. So I was doing HIIT in the gym. We were doing like sets, and between every set I was like checking my phone and like replying to an email and then getting back to doing weights or whatever I was doing. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I hate this. So eventually I kind of started pushing myself to do more and more of the writing, because I wasn't doing it because I was like, oh, well, I don't have time to do the writing because there's all this PR that needs doing. And then I was like, well, if you want to do this other thing, go and do that thing. And then, if it doesn't work out, you can pick up PR later. So, one of the few journalists that went from PR into journalism rather than the other way around. But was doing that and realised that basically I kept writing about the sea and about fish and about sharks because I love it. And then, when I incorporated my business, which would have been 3 years ago now, I was, deciding, like, do I go with Melissa Hobson Limited or do I go with the Ocean Writer Limited? And I was still writing about various other things at that point. And I was like, no, let's just kind of brand it with the Ocean Writer. That's what I want to do. And that's going to give me, like, I guess, the focus to keep doing that and not getting distracted by the other things. 3 years later, here we are, spending all my day writing about fish and sharks and weird things happening in the sea. And yeah, I absolutely love it. It's been amazing.
And we've only just got started with Melissa's story. More to come in a moment. I just want to very quickly tell you that this episode is supported by Ecamm. Thank you so much to them. It is the all-in-one video studio for your Mac. It's how I managed to make all of the live stuff that I do with Being Freelance look so good. You can too. I'll tell you more about it later on. But if you want to save money on a paid plan or try it in a free trial for yourself, go to beingfreelance.com/Ecamm. Right now, though, well, let's get back to Melissa's story. There's quite a lot to chip into. So there's a period where you're freelancing and you're basically doing the thing that you had done for a career before, so PR and stuff like that. But you decide you want to focus on the writing and, more importantly, on ocean writing, on marine and science and things like that. How did you, so 3 years ago, sure, you call yourself the ocean writer, but what was that transition period like? Was it a transition, or did you literally turn one source off and go to the other?
No, it was definitely a transition. And I think it snuck up on me. By the time I branded, a lot of what I was doing was kind of writing about the ocean. I did have other clients. And I guess it was more kind of going from mainly PR to bringing in more of the copywriting, and then kind of pushing to do just more and more of the editorial stuff, which again, people usually do the other way around because there's more money in private clients than there is in journalism. It was partly, I guess, me thinking, stop finding reasons not to do the thing, right? Because I'd be like, well, I can't pitch that editor because it's really competitive. And it's like, well, yeah, but it's even more competitive if you're not pitching them, right? Yeah, it was kind of just pushing myself out of my comfort zone. The ocean stuff was just quite natural, I think. Whenever I found an exciting story, it was pretty much about the ocean because that's what I find really interesting. So it was more, yeah, I guess being a bit more strategic about if something comes in that maybe you could do and you could do it fine, but you wouldn't necessarily love it and it's not taking you in the direction that you want to go, then maybe don't grab that just for the sake of it, and being a bit more selective, I think, about what I'm taking on, and yeah, just being a bit more laser focused rather than going yeah, I can do anything. What do you want me to do? I'll do it. I'll take it.
Yeah, which is quite, it's a tough thing to do, isn't it? So you're turning work down because you're like, no, because this isn't the thing I want to do. This isn't the niche.
Exactly. And I think if I hadn't done that, I would probably still be working in PR. At the time, businesses were starting to think about how they communicate their sustainability, and a lot of PR people were starting to think about specializing in sustainability kind of PR, but I'd already been doing it for quite a while, so I was getting onto people's radars. So I definitely could have carved out that as a niche, sustainability comms. But as I say, it just wasn't the right fit for me. And I think that's what's really important about niching, from my perspective, is, people will get in touch sometimes and they'll have just graduated and they'll be like, yeah, I want to do exactly what you want to do. And I'm like, great, you might do, but try it. Because you might absolutely hate certain bits about it and you don't know until you've given it a go. I did, a decade of PR, probably a bit longer. And it's it takes that time to go, do you know what? This isn't the right fit for me, or it isn't the right fit for me anymore. So yeah, I think it was just kind of trying different things, seeing what worked for me, and then having the balls to say no to stuff, and sometimes leave space for something else to come in, because I think that can be really difficult, right? If there's something here knocking at the door and we've got to pay the bills, it's really hard to say, oh, I'm going to say no to that just in case I can, then go away and cold pitch something myself that might not even come off. But yeah, I was just trying, and over time kind of getting to the point that actually I opened the door that I wanted open, and I moved away from the other bits and pieces that I didn't love as much.
How did you go about getting the clients in the niche that you wanted?
On the kind of editorial journalism side of things, you're basically pitching story ideas all the time to different editors. So when I was working with the Dive magazine, again, just on a freelance basis, every time it was me coming to Steve and going, I'm going to go to this place and they do this here and it's really interesting. Might you be interested in a story? Or I've seen this and it's interesting, or, whatever. And you kind of have to sell that story every time. And the editor might say no. And obviously, if they don't, you might try and shop it around to someone else that's relevant. Or if they say yes, then, you work out the plan and what's the word count and what's the fee, and you kind of get on with it. So when I was doing the dive writing, kind of the scuba reviews, I was also doing bits of like eco travel writing. There was like an eco website that I was doing bits and pieces for. Those were unpaid. And I probably kept doing them for a lot longer than I should have done, thinking, I need to build my portfolio. And it's like, yeah, you don't need to do it for a year or two or whatever, you still are a business. And then, so it's just kind of building that muscle and constantly. And again, I'm still doing it now, even with my regular editors that I speak to day in, day out. One of them, I pitched some ideas this morning and he liked some of them, and some of them he was like, no, we're not going to go with those. And that's just kind of the way it goes. So you do have to have a pretty thick skin, especially when you're starting out, I think, and editors don't know you. Some of them are getting hundreds of pitches every day and they can't even read them, let alone reply to them. So you're like sending out these ideas and going like, hello, hi. But then it is, exciting, again, particularly when you first start out and an editor comes back, particularly from, maybe one of the bigger titles or something, and they want to run your story and you're like, wait, what? My story? You replied and you said yes. Like, what? But over time you kind of get more of that. You build up relationships with the editors. They know that you're good to work with, and you file copy on time and all that kind of thing. And then I guess as people see that, like, oh, she writes for BBC Wildlife or she writes for Nat Geo, like, she'd be quite good to work with. And then I think that helps as well, kind of grease the wheels when you're sending a pitch and you're like, yeah, I've been published here, there, wherever. It gives you a bit of kind of proof, I guess, that, you're good to take a chance on with a story.
The relationships sound really important. How do you keep them, alive? How do you nurture them? I'm not quite sure what the word is. Nurture sounds a bit too deliberate.
It's a bit creepy, isn't it? Nurture. Ooh. I guess from my point of view, I just try and focus on doing good work and being good to work with. And I think that kind of speaks for itself a lot of the time. Sometimes, when you do these like webinars and stuff, and quite a lot of places will do an interview with this editor on, how to get published or whatever. And it's always helpful to kind of go along to those. And I'm always so surprised by the number of editors that say, we're looking for writers that can meet their deadlines and that don't get stroppy when we send them edits about their piece. And I'm like, wait, that's not a bar. That's like the bare minimum, right? File on time. And if they have edits or corrections, whatever, of course they do. Like, that's why you have an editor, to shape the piece and make it better. So I think, just being nice to work with, being a real human, just having a little, chit chat with people on your emails as well can really help, like getting to know them as people and them getting to know you as a person as well, I think does help. And then obviously for me, having a niche, I think, means that editors who have worked with me, if a story comes up that is in my kind of sector or in my field of expertise, I'm going to pop straight to mind, right? Because they know sometimes I do other things, but like mainly I do the ocean stories. And so last week, actually, I had one of my editors from one of my regular publications, but I don't work with this editor regularly, but obviously they have their team meetings and stuff. There was story that someone had discovered this like you might have seen it. It was like a really cute little blue deep sea octopus. And there was some
Yeah.
like cute footage of it bimbling around, and everyone had covered it. And Nat Geo hadn't, and they'd seen it and went, oh God, we really need to cover this, but we need it turned around like now. And they dropped me a message and said, could you do this by 10 a.m. US time tomorrow? And they came to me because they know I do ocean stuff. They know I can turn things around quickly. I can file on time. I know how they write, how they structure their pieces. I was about to walk into the theatre when I got this email, and I was like, if I tried to do 10 a.m. and I was a few hours late, is that going to be a problem? Because I couldn't drop everything while I was in the theatre. I did send a few sneaky emails to get the ball rolling. But yeah, I think having the niche for me, you know, people, if I was doing a bit of ocean stuff and a bit of animals and a bit of sustainability, and sometimes I did food and drink and sometimes I did travel, you're not going to pop up, you know, top of their mind in the same way, because you can kind of do a bit of everything, but you're not necessarily known for that one thing. And yeah, as I say, when something pees in the ocean and an editor needs someone to write about it, and I have had those emails more than once, like, oh yeah, you know, this happened and we thought of you. And I'm like, yep, this is not the first time I've written about dolphin wee, so you are correct to come in this direction.
You make it sound easy, right? This transition into this niche, into being the specialist, into being known, into having the editors of huge publications calling you. Did it feel that way?
No, it still doesn't. It's, you know, it is really hard work all the time. And especially when I was starting out, no, it definitely didn't feel easy. And I think when people are looking at getting into writing, that's something that maybe is a real challenge, because it's not spoken about as much, that like you could be pitching someone for weeks and months and not even know if they're reading your emails. I do have some little software so I can see if they've looked at my emails, which actually is really handy, because I know, you know, this editor doesn't even open my emails, so maybe it's a problem with my subject line, right? Or, you know, they're looking at it, but they're not replying. And there's kind of this ladder, like just getting completely ghosted. It might just be, you know, you're really in the wrong ballpark, or they're too busy or whatever. If they reply and say no, a lot of people find that really disappointing, right? Because it's a rejection. But from my perspective, I think editors are so busy that if they come back to you and say no, and especially if they give you feedback why, they probably see a little something in there, and it's like, not this story, but I have taken the time to respond to you to like kind of say, actually, we do those kind of pieces in-house. So it's really important. And that was one of the things that took a lot of time for me, is trying to take all that feedback on board. And, you know, when I started pitching Nat Geo, God, I dread to think what stories I pitched them, because they would have been not great. And eventually I just kept pitching the animals editor, and she, I think, took a chance on me with the first story, which was about why do whales beach? Why do they kind of strand, right, when they wash up on coastlines? I'm hoping that there was a big kind of newsworthy stranding that had given me that hook, and I wasn't just like, oh, why do whales strand? And I would imagine to get the commission, there was probably something that happened that was relevant to that story. And then after that, I kept pitching her again for, I think, a few months. And it wasn't right because of this, and it wasn't right because of that. And I still have that now. You know, there's editors that I'm pitching and just not quite finding the right story. And that can be really tough, because you're like, you know, you want to work with them, you want to pay your bills. And yeah, you kind of just have to keep going and hope that eventually all the things are going to line up and you'll get that byline that you want. And sometimes it might be, in a surprising direction as well. I've started writing for Chemical and Engineering News. I've done a couple of pieces for them. One of my editors moved to that publication, and now I'm kind of thinking, oh, actually, you know, there is cool chemistry in the ocean. So like, can I be pitching them? And just always looking for those opportunities. But yeah, it takes time and work, as you say, to kind of keep those relationships going and then also be looking for other opportunities as well. So yeah, it's definitely not easy.
Now, I love that you're sitting there with your Ocean Writer branded tee on and hoodie.
The logo's on the back, which...
I love this logo.
Which,
beautiful.
Yeah, Stefan did it for me, who you've had on the podcast before.
Where do you wear those other than on podcasts? Is having the branded stuff on important?
I think initially when I got Stefan to do my logo and I loved it so much that I was like, I want it on everything. So I got a little hoodie. My dog got a little hoodie, which is actually, that's how I unveiled the logo. I did a little video of him at the beach wearing his branded hoodie. I got a little mug and a notepad and stuff. You know, it was probably just a little bit self-indulgent because I was like, oh my God, I have a logo. This is so exciting. But I do wear it to in-person events. I'll always wear either my t-shirt or my hoodie. So I've got a bit of branding on. For me, it's handy because I assume people don't recognize my face. Like some people who I know through LinkedIn or whatever might, you know, if I've had Zoom calls with them, they might see me in a room and be like, oh, there's Mel. But otherwise, you know, you go to these networking events and there could be people that you've been chatting to on email and you don't know what they look like. And I have been at an event where I was looking for one of my editors who I could see her little thumbnail picture and I was wondering, I was like staring at everyone, eavesdropping onto people's conversations. And then I managed to figure out who she was and then kind of pounce on her and be like, hello. But having my branding on means the other way around. If people know me but they don't recognize me, they're more likely, I think, to come and say hello. And I have had that. And I've actually I was at an event the other day and someone kind of, you know, saw the branding on my hoodie and they were like, oh, you know, just wanted to have a chat, really interested about what you do and la 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 la. If I go and nobody notices it, it doesn't really matter. You know, I went in a black hoodie, it's fine. But I think it can help you connect with people and it can help kind of spark conversations as well, right?
Back with Melissa's story in a moment. Just want to let you know that this episode of Being Freelance is supported by Ecamm. It's a video studio for your Mac. It is so insanely clever. One of my favourite functions of it is turning your webcam into a virtual webcam, which basically means you can run all sorts of effects that you might normally expect to see on TV via your webcam, which means, of course, you can put them into Zoom or Google Meet or Teams, although you will still be in Teams, but still, it will look amazing. Overlays, screen shares, all of these kind of things will look slick as anything. When we did a live webinar on LinkedIn last year, this was live streaming, it was all about tax for freelancers. Tax for freelancers sounds dull, but it didn't look dull because we were using Ecamm. And recently I made like a tutorial video about how to do promotion for your podcasts, because I'm a podcast editor, using your phone. And I did that using the new Ecamm Duo feature, which basically means you can record or live stream in both landscape and vertical at the same time, so you don't have to faff about in editors afterwards. You can do them both made in the right way for the right format at the same time. I can post to LinkedIn, I can post to YouTube Shorts or Instagram, but only record it once. Amazing. You want to try this for yourself? Make sure you go to beingfreelance.com/ecamm. There is a promo code on that link that will also save you 15% on a paid plan, but you can get started for free and try it all out for yourself. So if you have a Mac, make sure you get Ecamm installed on it pronto so that you can start upgrading your video to suit the brand of your business. Thank you to Ecamm for supporting this episode. Right now, let's get back to Melissa's story. You mentioned LinkedIn. You seem very active on LinkedIn.
Yeah, always posting on LinkedIn. It's kind of when I was copywriting and doing kind of more private copywriting work, it was my main inbound channel, really. Like keeping my presence really active on there was helping. And, you know, clients were coming to me through LinkedIn, kind of finding me that way. And again, you know, it's, I think, quite clear from my LinkedIn profile pretty much what I do, because I'm doing more of the editorial stuff. It's not so much that editors are finding me on LinkedIn now, although some have. But I think it's more, when you're in a particular niche, keeping up that marketing, like you kind of don't know who's going to be reading, who's seeing stuff. And I do find people who are following me who are kind of, from a business perspective, like, completely irrelevant, quote unquote, to my business. I don't know, some people might say, well, they're not your target audience. You don't need to market to them. And like, I don't. But partly if they're enjoying the content, I do little posts just about fun facts about the ocean, and people really engage with those, which is part of my whole shtick, right? Like, I want people who don't love the ocean to be like, oh, that's actually really cool, and get more into it. But also a lot of the time, if an opportunity comes up, or there's a call for pitches, or there's something, random people who I've never heard of who are following me will send it to me and be like, oh, by the way, did you see this? And I've had that quite a lot. And often it will be, a certain opportunity will get sent to me by 4 different people at once, most of whom I don't really know. So that's really nice and really cool. I'm not super strategic on there, as you can probably tell. I'm sharing my stories because I think that's, a good way to showcase my work. I'm sharing kind of fun facts about the ocean and cool videos and things like that because I think it's cool and it's a bit different from all the hustle bros on LinkedIn. And then I'm sharing pictures of my dog because he's really cute, and I don't care if it's not Facebook. Going to squeeze in a tenuous business reason to tell people about what he's doing.
So is Instagram not a big thing for you?
Not really. I think just because the nature of my business is words. I do use Instagram mainly just to show people where my dog is doing something cute. But yeah, from the writing side of it, it's not really where my clients are going to find me particularly. And there's so many channels, right? There's like Instagram, and there's Blue Sky, and there's LinkedIn, and I just don't have the capacity for all of them. So I kind of focus on LinkedIn. I have an Instagram presence, and like if I've published a story, an article, I'd share a story on it or something, but it's not particularly a focus, in the same way that it would be for an illustrator or a graphic designer or a photographer who's doing really visual stuff. That said, I do use Instagram a lot for work, for finding my stories, because a lot of the time science is really slow, right? The paper comes out years after the fieldwork is done, but now often scientists and scientific teams are sharing like videos and photos of stuff that's going on in the field. And that can be a really great way for me to get a tip off, either for a story or something to watch out for, or like maybe a paper that's new or a paper that's coming. So yeah, definitely using Instagram, but in a different way. It's not really kind of my marketing.
And how about other people who do what you do? Like, do you know, or are you a solo fish in this ocean?
There's a couple of fish. There's a little bunch of us, I think. I guess it's a bit of a Venn diagram as well. Like, there are certain people who might write about animals. So when cool stuff happens with ocean animals, they're going to be covering those stories. But there are a handful of kind of writers specifically focusing on marine issues. I'm connected with most of them. Like, some of them I know really well. We send each other opportunities. We catch up on Zoom. Some of them, we don't know each other quite as well, but we know of each other and engage with their LinkedIn posts and stuff like that. Even within the kind of ocean niche, slightly different specialisms and expertise. So Ali, who's a friend of mine, does scuba diving travel. She's more into the travel sphere, which I do little bits of, but not quite as much. There's Sam Andrews, who obviously does a lot of marine writing, but she's a proper scientist. We have kind of slightly different clients and can cover things in a different way. And she has loads of, pros that I don't have, and vice versa. So, and again, we're really good friends and we chat all the time. And I think when you're freelancing, it can be easy to see other people as competition when they're doing what you do. But like, I'm one person, I have one pair of hands and one laptop. I can only do a certain amount of work, right? And there are so many stories to tell. So like, why would I be gatekeeping? I think it's awesome that there are other people talking about the ocean and conservation and getting people inspired, because I can't do it all on my Todd. That would be ridiculous. And obviously sometimes you see a story and you are like, oh, how did I miss that? You know, someone didn't send it to me before the embargo or whatever. But really, I think you're kind of celebrating all those other people and their wins, and they do the same for you. And as I say, you know, the freelancers that I'm connected with in my space, like we share opportunities and we tip each other off on stuff. And I think that's, you know, really nice to have that.
How about the work-life balance side of things? Because there was a point here where you were talking about the edge of burnout back when you were doing PR and comms, which was very frenetic and full on. How's it for you now?
Yeah. It's still really challenging. I mean, there's a lot of reasons, right? I think a lot of freelancers are going to resonate with that idea of like, you go freelance because you don't want to do the 9 to 5 and then you're doing the 24/7 because it's, you know, or everything is about your business. Also, and this is something that I'm working on this year, you know, last year I was doing a lot of news. So a marine science paper gets published. I might get a heads up a few days or a week before. I pitch to my editor. If I get a commission, I have to do the interviews, write it up, do the edits, you know, get it all sorted, turned around for that point that the embargo lifts, because we want our story to be out as soon as it's out. And I was really busy last year, which was great, but it meant that it was a lot of like tight turn stuff, just back to back to back to back to back. And I kind of said, oh, you know, you think of the like freelance feast and famine. And I was like, when it gets quiet, I'll take some time off. And that kind of didn't happen because I work with lots of different editors. You know, one editor's quiet and then another editor that you haven't heard from in a while pops up out of the woodwork. So that's something I'm, being a bit more, trying to be a bit firmer about this year in terms of actually planning and booking that time off and saying no to stuff if it comes in during that time off. But also I'm doing a bit more kind of feature-based stuff now. It's a longer lead time. You can kind of plan it a bit better around what else is going on. But yeah, really, particularly because I'm doing it on my own as well, right? Most of the freelancers I know have a spouse who is either has a stable job or at least has another income. So like there's a bit of balance there, whereas I could have a busy month and then have nothing booked for the next few months after that. And you kind of don't know because news is so tight turn. Like I might have another busy month next month or I might have nothing. So it can be quite stressful to be like, oh yeah, I'll just take that brief and I'll just take that brief. But it's also really important to rest, right? So yeah, my main enforcer of work-life balance obviously is the dog, who he likes to go to the beach and he likes to go to his local coffee shop and he will tell me when he wants to go. And if I have something on, sometimes it doesn't even matter. He's like, no, we're going to see Chris at the hangout. We're going to go and get a coffee now. And I'm like, okay, I guess we are.
So that must mean you have to be really good with your finances in terms of having a buffer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is actually something. So you remember when I was in the Cookie Collective with you, right? And we were talking about income and buffers and all that kind of stuff. And I did at the time, I would put little bits into a buffer, but I was a little bit more, you know, if I had a big month, I would be like, great, I'll take that extra. And you said to us how you kind of pay yourself a salary, basically, that is set every month. So I got a bit more strategic about it. So basically, if an invoice comes in, I will split it into different pots and like literally pots in my bank account. It's one of those ones you can split stuff up, right? So about half of it goes to my kind of salary and dividends. And then there's some set aside for tax. There's some set aside for software, my VA, those kind of, spendy things you need to put money towards. I put 1% donating to charity. So that goes into a little pot. And then, it does mean that smooths things out. So if I have a really, really big month, then a chunk of that will be going into savings that if I have some time off, or in March of this year, I was on a press trip for a couple of weeks. And then as soon as I got back, I got the flu and I was knocked out for 2 weeks and then still not very well for a couple of weeks after that. So that's like 6 weeks, right? Like a whole month properly off work and 6 weeks not really doing much, which would have been a lot more terrifying, frankly, if I didn't have that buffer to go, it's okay because I've planned for this. And I can still pay myself. I can still pay the mortgage and the bills. And I think that helps give you a bit of confidence as well to kind of, maybe take those risks or go for things that you really want to do that are less likely to pay off maybe. And also have holidays and time off and, be sick or deal with whatever the universe is throwing at you, because that happens too.
You said VA. What does your VA do for you?
She is my hero, Poppy. She's amazing. She does just a few hours a week for me. And she's doing a lot of email kind of management. One of the types of stories I do for BBC Wildlife is basically like finding really awesome videos about stuff that's happened in the ocean and then writing a short like video-led article that's basically like, oh my God, look at this awesome thing that happened in the ocean. A little kind of, bit of a mini interview about what's going on in the footage. And as you can imagine, like that back and forth of like contacting the videographer, asking for permission, sharing the BBC's usage rights, getting the footage, getting the credits, asking any questions, like it takes a lot of time, but it's also really bitty. And I was finding that like I was trying to focus on something and I'm like, got to reply to this email and then reply to this email. And Poppy does all of that kind of liaison for me. And she just, drops me a little comment like, this one's ready to go. And I've got a link with the footage. I've got the credit. I've got all the information. And then I can just focus on writing the story without all the, the back and forth on it. And then she helps me with some of my admin. So there's a database called the ALCS, which is like secondary royalties, basically. Freelance writers call it the magic money tree because we don't really know how it works, but you log your relevant articles, and if they were suitable for you to get secondary royalties, like once a year you just get sent some money. And it's like awesome. But again, it's that kind of bitty admin that like takes time and it's distracting from the other stuff. So she looks after those for me and saves off my coverage and sometimes does bits of research and, all those kind of bits and pieces. So just stuff I think that lightens the load and gives me the headspace to focus on what I need to focus on, because I think particularly if you're writing is really draining, right? You need to be focused all the time. And if there's things that are kind of pulling your attention, that can just make it really difficult to write a good piece. So she's brilliant. I love it. And it was something that I was leading up to for a really long time. And I felt like I couldn't justify the investment. But I'm, really, really glad that I did go with that.
Yeah. How long have you been doing that?
I think about 1.5 years now I've had her on board. Yeah.
Now, Mel, I always do this thing where I ask for 3 facts about yourself to make 2 true, 1 a lie. Let me figure out the lie. What do you have for me?
Okay, so these are all on a bit of a theme. I guess you've kind of gathered from our chat that getting to where I am now was a little bit of a happy accident. And things kind of happened to me accidentally quite a lot. So my 3 things are: I accidentally gave myself 2 black eyes while scuba diving. I accidentally went to lunch with Andrew Ridgeley from Wham. And I accidentally swam with our local seal at the beach. which is like a block from my house.
Wow, this is brilliant. How on earth do you give yourself 2 black eyes whilst wearing a scuba mask?
That is a good question. It was actually, the mask was the problem, right? So I was going away, was doing a scuba trip, and I bought a new mask because I had this old crappy one. And I was like, no, I'll get myself a new mask. And I guess it didn't fit. And there's something called the squeeze, which like as you're going down, the pressure makes like a vacuum. And you're equalizing your mask as you go down anyway. So I kind of didn't really know anything about it until I got back up to the boat. And I was like, oh, my face feels weird. And no one said anything. And then I got back to the apartment and I had these little like, you know, when you've like burst a blood vessel, you have little dots on
Yes.
like on my eyes. And then by the next day, it was awful. My laptop, you know, the facial recognition was like, nah, sorry, mate. you're not getting in.
Wow, so the pressure of the mask gave you black eyes?
Gave me 2 black eyes. Yeah. And I was on a press trip, so I was there on my own in off season with 2 black eyes. Yeah, so that was fun. The waiters were very nice to me.
Okay. You accidentally had lunch with Andrew Ridgeley from Wham. How?
So one of the things that not so common anymore, and especially now I'm in Hastings, but one of the things sometimes that would happen is like PRs and journalists would go for lunch and have a little meeting and a chat about like whatever's going on. And I'd been invited as a journalist to this lunch. I was still working full-time in PR, but I was doing the scuba diving and writing on the side. So I've been invited to this lunch by this guy who, I guess he owned a dive resort, I don't know, something. And I was like, yeah, sure. And I get there and he's like, oh, I hope you don't mind, like, my friend's here too. And I was like, that's a bit weird to bring your friend to a business meeting, but okay. And he was like, yeah, I should warn you, he's a celebrity. I was like, okay. He was like an older gentleman and I was, you know, a lot younger at the time. He was like, have you heard of Wham? I nearly fell over. Like, we still had George at the time. And I was like, oh my God, I'm about to go to lunch with George Michael. And he was like, yeah, it's Andrew Ridgeley. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then we went and we had lunch and he was very nice. He talked about hiking and cycling and stuff. And yeah.
Oh my God. So
and then
far...
I went back to work and I was like, I just had lunch with a guy from Wham.
Wow. Okay, and then you accidentally went swimming with a seal.
Yeah.
Near your house.
We don't see them too often around here, but there's a colony at Fairlight of grey seals. And you can get the boat round and have a look at them from a distance. But sometimes they might like bimble along to Hastings. And yeah, I was just having a little sea swim. And usually, right, when I'm on land, I'm like always looking at the sea, right? And like that wave looks a bit weird. Is it something? And I've seen dolphins off the coast here and, you know, always having a look. I was in the sea just having a lovely time. Then I saw like from the corner of my eye, I saw people on the beach like waving at me. And I've kind of got water in my eyes. And I can't really see, you know, the sun, I can't really see. So I'm like, oh, hi, assuming it's someone I know because we're a little town. I know a lot of people. So I'm like, hi. And they're like really waving. Yeah. And then I realized they're not like waving. They're kind of properly like, dude, what's going on? And I looked around and this seal was like super, like closer than you want a seal to be, right? These things are fucking huge.
Is that a technical scientific term?
That is a scientific term. I think they can weigh like 300 kilos and they have really big teeth and they have a lot of bacteria in their teeth.
Well, no one's asking you to kiss it.
No, but what if it bites me? It might, I don't know.
Sorry, yes, my head went automatically to kissing, which, to be fair, is a weirder way for my mind to work.
Is weird.
Okay.
And you're just, suddenly next to this huge animal that, like, they look really cute in pictures, and then they're right next to you, like, dwarfing you. And I was like, oh my God. So I swam back home, got out.
Oh my God. Oh.
And then was like, yeah, that was really cool, guys. Wasn't that awesome? Styled it out.
Oh no, come on. Which of these is a lie? These are all true. I mean, weirdly enough, Andrew Ridgeley is so bizarre that it feels that must be true. Like, why? Because otherwise you would have made up a story that was also something to do with the sea, whereas this is suddenly Andrew Ridgeley. I'm kind of feeling like that one is true. Black eyes, I don't know the science around it, whether that is true or not, but it does make sense. The pressure as you go down, squeezing on your foot. Why not? The seal, would I have seen you on the news? Do you know? Yeah. Very well acted if this is a lie. But I'm going to say the seal is the lie.
You are correct.
Yes! Come on!
Yeah, we do have seals, but I'm not really a sea swimmer here. It's far too cold.
Oh my God. Oh, I'm so pleased. Tell you what, though, your acting was very good. Very believable. Now, if you could tell your younger self one thing about being freelance, what would that be?
I would tell myself, and I still do tell myself on the daily, stop getting in your own way. And by that, I mean, we kind of touched on it. It is so easy to be like, oh, well, I won't pitch that editor because they'd never say yes. And I mean, they might not. I was pitching the New York Times for 18 months before they commissioned a story. And it was because an octopus was riding a shark like a hat. And why would you not commission that story? But I could have got to that point and been like, well, he's never commissioned anything. Why would I pitch this? They're not going to accept this. It's silly. And the same with, all these opportunities. If you don't put yourself forward for them, you're not even giving someone the opportunity to say no to you. So you're like already, putting that barrier up. And I think that's something that particularly kind of newer freelancers, and I have it, when I'm speaking with more junior people, they're like, oh, no, I couldn't put myself forward for that competition or that this or, that whatever, because I wouldn't win or I wouldn't get it. And it's like, yeah, you might not, but you're definitely not going to if you don't give it a go. So yeah, that's something that I would, wish I'd done sooner, kind of stop self-selecting things and thinking, oh, I'm not good enough yet. And go for it. And if you think, if there's a solid reason that like you're really not meeting those criteria for something, what do you do to go and fix that? Do you need to do a course? Do you need to get published somewhere else? Do you need to practice something or, whatever? So like, I'm not just saying like, oh yeah, just go and throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks, but go for things a bit sooner than you think you're ready to.
Brilliant. Great advice. Melissa, it's been so good to chat. Go to beingfreelance.com. As there are for all of our guests, you can find links through so that you can find Melissa online. Maybe go and find out if they ever did publish the shark wearing an octopus for a hat or whatever it was.
They did. It's a good one.
They did. Go on. Go find it. So yeah, but really, thanks so much and all the best being freelance.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Okay, we're done for another one. Meant to mention, Mel, very kindly, ahead of our recording, sent me biscuits covered in ocean stuff. Like there's a clamshell, a mermaid's tail, a jellyfish. Also, we didn't mention in this that Melissa has a book all about shells in your local bookshop. So cool. Really chuffer. Well done, Melissa. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Come find me online, Instagram, where you can see a picture of those biscuits. What else? Oh, yes, LinkedIn, and of course in the Being Freelance community. Come say hi, beingfreelance.com, click on community. It's high time you did so, don't you think? Good. All right, see you for another one of these very soon. You have a great week. Being Freelance.